Hi, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to talk you through how to do a brake pad change on the Audi S4. So this one's the B8 version and it's a 2011. So I am going to try to cover a pads and disc change. But one thing you will notice in this video that I'm going to be measuring the discs, because a lot of people just take it as read that the discs have to go when it comes round to the pad change. But actually there's a specification for the discs, and if you measure them, then it is possible to get another set of pads, use out of them. Okay, without further ado, we'll get on with it. So that's about 29mm at the moment, and the spec is up to 2mm of wear. So it started at 30, now it's at 29. And that means it's got life left in it. Bearing in mind it's only lost a millimetre on the life of the existing set of pads. So they should easily do another set of pads for me. So now I'm just going to turn the steering. Got both sides jacked up because I like to get to this condition on both sides before I start work. So if I turn the steering to the right, then that'll bring this caliper further round, and it will make it easier to work on. So those wires that you can see going into there is for the brake pad wear indicator. To make it easier to disconnect the electrical connection, which is just behind there, it's possible to pop this little bracket free. So you just kind of lever it out really. And then it just pops clear, and so we can see quite easily the tab at the back of the electrical connection socket, which we then need to push, and then that pops free. One thing I should have done earlier is put a little bit of WD-40 onto the bolts that I know I'm going to be undoing, because it does make things easier, especially if they've had time to soak. So what I'm going to do is spray these now, and then I'll go around the other side and I'll spray the ones that I'm going to remove. Okay, so there's actually two sets of bolts. The first ones are the big bolts at the back, and they're the ones that are holding the caliper to the hub. And then the next are smaller bolts, which are effectively holding the two parts of the caliper together. And I did a bit of research, and if you undo the small ones first, the bulk of the caliper comes away, and then it makes it easier to get to the bigger bolts behind. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is pop this clip off, and that's because effectively it's anchoring the two parts of the caliper together. So the first thing is in the middle there, push in quite firmly, and then using a screwdriver, just kind of gently pry at the back, and then it'll come off and it'll snap your fingers a little bit, like it did to me just then. There's just a 13mm bolt at the back there, of top and bottom, so there's two of them. Let's get to the ratchet and just break loose these screws. Just loosening the top on it first, and instead of removing it entirely, moving on to the bottom one. And you can see that one's out now, just working on the bottom one now. Interestingly as well, is there's a little bit of blue Loctite on these bolts. So when I fasten them back up later, I'll clean that off with a wire brush, and then I'll just add a little bit more Loctite on them. So I'll just gently lever top and bottom. Yeah, it's starting to come. And you're best just taking your time. It's quite handy to lever it at the back of these brackets where it hooks onto the main part of the caliper, I've noticed. Okay, coming free. There we go. And what I think I'll do actually is use one of these holes here that the bolts I've just removed went through. Okay, so this one it's a 21mm socket, and with this main part of the caliper out of the way, then it means that you'll get in with your breaker bar now. So that's one big benefit of splitting the caliper to remove it. So just cracking loose the bottom one, and now the top one, that I can go to the ratchet, which will be a little bit easier to work with in that space. That's the top one removed. See some spacers on it, so obviously don't lose them, make sure they stay on the bolt. Bottom bolt coming out, and then this part of the caliper comes off. So with the wheel and caliper off, there's not actually a lot holding the disc on now, and all you have is a securing screw there, and it's a Torx screw, and it's a T30. So these little Torx screws, they can be a little bit tight sometimes because they've been in a long time and because of the heat in the area. And they can be easy to strip out as well. So sometimes what's a good idea is if you put the T30 bit in, and this is just a little piece of a socket, but anyway, you can just kind of just shock it a little bit, and that'll sometimes just free it off. Okay, that's got it. So there we go. Now, sometimes the discs will just fall off. Yeah. If not, then you've got your mallet from earlier, you know, and you can kind of tap around the edges with your rubber mallet. So okay, so that's what you'd do if you were replacing the discs. You would literally clean up all these faces, which I'm going to do in a minute anyway, and you would pop your new ones on. What I'm going to do is go and just take the edge off of this disc, just so that the new pads go on nicely. So these discs aren't as hard a material as you might think, and so it's quite easy to take that lip off. I don't want to score all the way across the face. To be honest, if it scratched a little bit, then the disc would probably bed it back in. Sorry, the new pads would probably bed it back in. So all I'm going to do is angled up ever so slightly. Just kind of take that lip off. And just in case you've got any doubts, I've cleaned the lip off, so this is the true thickness of the disc now. And as you can see, there's loads of life left on that. Okay, so I'm just going to clean the hub up a little bit, and I've just got some Mk6 here. And now just a small amount of copper grease onto there. And you don't want much, because really it's just to stop it binding, you know, to make it easy to remove next time. And if you put a lot on, there'd be a risk of it getting squeezed or thrown out, and then obviously it can get onto your brakes. Okay, so I'm going to treat this disc now like it was a new disc, in case you're replacing discs and pads as a set, which you'll do most of the time. So if you just got this disc out of the packet new, then they come with a little bit of grease on them, you know, in order to stop rust. So it's important that you you clean that up and take that grease off. So what I've got is some brake cleaner. So don't be confused with other types of sprays that are solvent based. For this sort of job we really want to use brake cleaner and no other alternative, because some things that you use can leave a residue, and then they can cause your brakes to bind, which you really don't want. You just kind of spray down that surface on a new disc and then just clean it up nicely, and you do that on both sides. You just pop that on and then rotate it into place. And this is just a retaining screw really. Remember that your wheel and the caliper and other things actually hold the disc on. So this kind of just holds it in place while you're fitting. Okay, so finally turning our attention back to the pads. So what I'll do is just gently loosen off the pad at either side and remove that. It's the outer one at this stage. And now what I'm going to do is press that piston back. So as your pads have worn, then that piston is extended more and more. Now on some cars you actually have to spin the piston to almost kind of ratchet it back. But on this car I've done the research and it's just a normal straight piston, so you just have to squeeze it back again. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is pop the bonnet and just check the fluid level and loosen off the fluid cap. The reason for that is as I push that piston back, it forces the fluid back into the reservoir, and if you've had your car in for service recently with the worn pads, then as part of the service they've probably topped up your brake fluid, so it might be quite high, and then as you push the piston back, the reservoir can overflow, and that's you know, brake fluid is really bad for your paint and for other engine components. So on the Audi B8, A4 and S4, the reservoirs are over here. Just going to unscrew the cap so I can have a look. And what I might do is just pop this cover off so that I can see the level a little bit better. There's just a little flat plastic disc that holds this panel in place at either end. So looking from the other side now, over here I can see that I can see the fluid level. So I'm just going to leave that cap loose, and then as I push the piston back, I'll keep checking back and making sure that the fluid level's not getting too high. Just got a G-clamp here, and because I've taken that front pad out, it's given a little bit of clearance, and you'll notice I've left this pad in place, and that's because the end of the piston's often hollow down the middle, so you kind of need something against the end of the piston in order to press against. And also we know that we're going to be replacing these pads, so it doesn't matter, you know, if the surface of the pad gets damaged a little bit. And then just gently going to wind that back now. And you shouldn't really feel any resistance. And I'm just going to go check the fluid level. My fluid level is a bit high, so this is what I do about it. So the first thing is put a cloth down, you know, to protect from drips. Then I undo the cover and move it off to one side. Then I have a little kind of bottle handy, and then I have some lint-free cloth. And what I do is I literally just dab out of it. So you could use a syringe if you've got one, but just carefully, you know, extract a bit of fluid. So just put that cap back into place. Not tightened up because I've got the other side to do yet, but you're trying to keep excess moisture and any dirt and other bits getting in there. Release the G-clamp, and I'll just take that pad out because it's not required anymore. The wear indicator cable is on this pad, so you have to feed it through underneath. So this is the wear indicator cable, and that's just a little cover for your bleed nipple, and it has a little loop on it, so you can just pop that loose, and then you can just see it's just hooked in there, so you just pop that loose as well. And then that pad comes free. So one thing that I did when I bought these is I made sure it said that I got a new wear indicator, but not every kit comes with that. So so it's worth just kind of checking to make sure it comes with that piece. And I think I said earlier that there's only one, and it's on the passenger side front, so you don't need another one for the other side. These are the pads that I took off. So like I said, it's always worth doing a quick check. You know, are they about the right size? You can put them front to front. Okay, so I just want to fit the wear indicator before I so it's pretty self-explanatory how it pops in, because it will only clip in one position, and obviously you want the cable to go out the back and back through the caliper, if you remember when I removed it. So that clip part goes into the middle of the piston. So I fed the wire through, got the pad in place, so I'm just going to get the other pad. It has a little knobble which fits into there, which helps it locate. Okay, so I've just got some thread lock here, and I'm just going to put a small blob on both of these bolts, and then I'm just going to put this outer part of the caliper back on again. It's a big bolt, so you'll be able to get it nice and tight using this bar, and also I've put just a little bit of thread lock on. There you go. So that's that bit back on. Okay, so just remembering that this wire was held by the little rubber cover for the bleed nipple. So popping that wire in there. So I've got some snips because I don't need this tie wrap anymore. I could have done with sharper ones. Oh. There we go. So you remember those slidey parts for the floating caliper, you know, the slidey pistons where the 13mm bolts came out? Just make sure that they're pushed back, and then that will allow you to get that in properly. So I've got a little bit of thread lock on the bolts. And then it's the 13mm socket. Tighten those back up again. Now that we've got that caliper all back together again, then we have this little spring to fit back in place. There we go. It can be a little bit fiddly, but the key thing is you're pushing up with your thumbs and you're kind of compressing that spring, and the wing parts are on the back of the caliper there. So once you kind of compress it enough, the little tab can pop into the hole at the front. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video useful. If you've got questions or comments, then please go ahead and post them below, and I'll answer if I can. Also, consider subscribing. If you subscribe and enable notifications, then YouTube will let you know when I release new videos.